on the same.
So here's the one thing that I'm sure you're aware of that happens when you have a storage facility, right?
You store more stuff.
And everybody thinks it's their free reign. I'm assuming Lee is gonna be
It is
master
not.
of
Oh,
all.
yeah, no.
He's not.
No, that there's not just gonna be a
Right,
store whatever you want in there. But really, the only storage location we have is the garage at South Elementary that is used. If you've seen the garage when you pull into the old Heritage, which is south, that, and we need something like that on that campus.
and that's my only caution, making sure someone's responsible for what goes in there, so it doesn't end up having to
Traditionally,
be
it's been
added
the
on.
board secretary that is in charge. So we can
Hey,
change that.
give me that list.
Yeah, they,
You got an RV?
Yeah, I do actually. No,
I mean, they keep things in pretty good order, I'd say, that, pretty proud of a garage, for what they have essential shipping. It's just, we're bigger, you know, we've got more equipment and hauling it back and forth. By the time you deploy snow equipment, if you've gotta get it out from central shipping to that campus, at the volume we need to get it there, you just, what are you saving in labor, you know, time to get it.
This is bond or?
Yes.
No, totally agree
And
with it, just have to supervise it.
I will say the estimated cost was substantially higher than the bid cost. We were very happy with how that transpired. So we have some more work to do with the rest of the bond, but that's a conversation for another day, actually for the next item.
So Pat, who would be the general, who would oversee all of this?
Sure, so we'll have the same construction process we have for everything else. OAK is our construction manager, and that's as close to having an employee as possible. They are working for the district, the board. Not that the architects and engineers aren't, it's just contractually different. So OAKs really are, cause it's not a general contract, it's a construction management arrangement. They help us write the contracts, I sign for the board.
So are there costs baked into these?
They're in excess of this. Their OAK's fees is in excess of this. I just bring, because we already approved OAK's contract back at the start of the bond. It's all, their fees and everything are baked into 114 million, the top line of the bond.
Would they do all the permitting and everything as well?
Most of it, I mean, architects submit a lot of the permits, they hold, but then, yeah, like Bureau of Construction Codes, architects submits it. Water resources, architect. It just, things are different in school construction. Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe I missed it, but, thank you.
No, I just agree.
Yeah, what was the timeline on this? Bids go out soon and then
Bidding,
construction?
yeah, we can start construction, we have to coordinate a couple things, but we can start construction on this, it can start in May. Construction might not be, laying foundation, but we've got site work to do. It's really attractive for, when I get to the bid tab, you'll see how attractive it was to the bidder community. But, yeah, this doesn't have to be done by September to start school, which is nice.
Well, we also have to dance with the PE classes that are out there.
Yep.
We don't want big, heavy equipment moving around, and kids are trying to play softball back there.
I was just saying, is it gonna be accessed by that bus loop road?
Yes.
So timing of construction based on buses coming and going?
Yeah, and it's curb cut into that, everything back is just we have to improve the road, it's a gravel road now, we're just gonna improve it, upgrade it to asphalt, back to the shed. Can we look at the bid tab?
I think most of us, reviewed that,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, so the nice thing about this, we have 35 bidders in, for 5 categories, so we've had $10 million projects, we didn't have this kind of participation, so that's the reason OAK did a great job getting us the number of bidders we have.
Sorry, it's been driving me nuts. The remote doesn't work.
Oh, sorry. I probably,
It's hard to hear the best.
stole battery. But anyways, yeah, so great bid participation. just had any questions about why the low bidders just in earthwork category one there? We didn't take low bidders and those, the two lowest bidders, they actually missed the road. You know, that's unfortunate for them. They're good companies, but Sidework Solutions done a lot of work for us and they have everything included in their bid. But every other category, the low bidder was interviewed and, they have everything in their bid.
So this will come before the board at the February meeting, if approved, then they start to work on the timeline and try to solidify the timeline, after board approval. Mr. Brick, any questions? Perfect. All right, last but not least, our superintendent goals. Traditionally, it's a January meeting of superintendent goals. I set draft goals to the board to review. I just want to go through these quickly and have discussion on if you think these are pertinent or not. I didn't have a chance to share them with anybody. I shared them with the full board the end of last week, I think it was. So I'll go through real quick. Each goal you'll see follows in line with different portions of our strategic plan. First is about academic performance still. It's similar to a goal I had last year, but knowing that we've made changes not only to the math curriculum at the elementary level, we've seen some acceleration in that conversation that we've already had as a board regarding middle school mathematics and what that looks like. So I firmly believe that curriculum is the number one thing we do in the district. So I think that should always be something that is a goal to work on, to try to always improve the opportunities for our kids to succeed in the classroom, all of our kids. So that goal kind of is tweaked a little bit. There's more about district continuous improvement process and team that's led by Mrs. Taylor, as well as Mrs. Fullhouse, that works with her, Mrs. Lemondowski, and a team of curriculum people that are led by Amy and her amazing work that they do. Next is district reorganization. This is a new goal. This goes back to the conversation I had earlier about what does it look like as we redefine some of the roles that we instituted when we had federal dollars, and how do we make this work in the support systems for all of our kids with operational dollars, and how do we do this? This is a heavy lift. I do want to thank the work that Ann Armstrong is doing with her staff and really her leadership on working through this also, on what this looks like. There are a lot of moving parts in all of our buildings. We want a chance to meet with, quite frankly, the HR subcommittee could very well be asked to meet as early as next week to have these conversations, even if it's a half-hour morning meeting or something, to have those conversations as HR. So you'll see, I'm not gonna read through the whole thing, you can read it and go from there, but that kind of outlines the process of what we're looking for. And really the reason why it's kind of an expedited timeline is because staff that are impacted by these decisions, we don't wanna tell them in August, hey, by the way, here's where you're going. We wanna tell them early on, so they know where we are. You'll see most of the positions they fall within their expectations of what they're doing, what their roles are, but we do have some shifting around. And I think they know what's going to happen. We just wanna make sure we lay it all out, so everybody's aware. And I think it's a really good plan. I do wanna thank Ann and Amy and Mandy and Pat. I'm not gonna thank myself, but these people are amazing when it comes to getting together and really hammering through this. And I'm talking hours and hours and hours of trying to figure this out, and do its best. And number one, student focused, number two, staff focused. And it's a heavy lift. I do wanna thank, I know, Mr. Anderson's here. I know Mrs. Teal just had to step out. But working with the EA also, it goes back to relationships, as Mr. Volheis, and I think working with some amazing teacher leaders. You know, there's always questions, but it's a great team to work with, so we're looking forward to that. Well, I don't know about looking forward to it, but it's a show. The next is a goal very similar to last year about diversity and advocacy, which Mrs. Thomas has so eloquently outlined earlier for the board. The biggest shift a little bit is really talking about the proactive approach, which we've always been reactive, and that's just the nature of what we do. How can we be more proactive? And then try to accomplish this goal by the end of the year. And not only the goal on a lot of these things that may not come to fruition or be done by the end of the year, but how can we continue to assess what we're doing also? So we do it, and it's not just here you go, take it and get it, but it's also, can we assess it, and can we survey and find out is this impacting the way we anticipated it impacting our staff, our students, our culture, all of those three main levels of that.
So when I, just a comment or question, when I look at your timeline, spring 2025 to gather feedback, to assess progress and impact, are you saying progress since the last surveys we did, or specifically on actions we have taken up to that point?
I think there's been a long gap between when we've gathered feedback for our constituents, and even though we're just getting this plane off the ground, we might not be at cruising altitude, and definitely we're not beginning to land. Maybe it's time to also do another climate survey. And we've had conversations, I will tell you, thanks to Mrs. Taylor and the work that they're also doing. We have our strategic planning survey that, excuse me, we do every 3 years for staff, students, and parents, staff, students, and parents. We also have an opportunity to potentially have additional survey feedback from our constituents, and Mrs. Taylor's gonna walk the board through that at our next work session in February. And that might be another approach. So we're looking at, can we do kind of comparative where we don't wanna do the same survey every year just to get trend data, we wanna do it every 3 years for strategic planning. But can we have an off-year cycle that maybe we also do trend data with that, but on a different cycle? So they're similar, but different surveys a little bit so that it looks different to our community also. We're not gonna ask about construction or bond issue stuff. That's more strategic planning stuff. That comes later into my next goal. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and I got a similar question for that one too. No, so that, go to the next goal. Go
So
ahead.
the next goal then is facilities planning. I think we are to a point, as Mr. Briggs outlined, one of the last projects was the storage facility at the high school. We still have odds and ends that we're cleaning up. We still have, we have to do a final assessment on what resources we have. We don't have $10 million left over to say, well, what do you wanna do? So we do some things we do have to kind of clean up and finish up. But then the question has come, I don't know about to the board, but definitely to some of our staff and administrators, and definitely myself, what's next? To really do a facilities assessment on what we have, where we are, what does it look like from a growth standpoint? What does it look like from what does a future bond issue potentially look like? So I will be, I'm really looking for approval from the board in February, not a formal approval, but more of a, yes, you want us to start doing this work. It won't take board action to say, do this work. It will take board action to say, we're putting something on the ballot, or here's what it looks like. But I don't wanna sit down with Mr. Briggs. I mean, I wanna sit down with you, but I don't wanna sit down with, construction, architects, all of these people have all these meetings about what this looks like. If the board says, you know what, let's take a few years and not do anything. I think there are questions about things that we can do. I do know that in my opinion, asking our community to increase the tax rate is not something that I think would be beneficial to a potential bond issue, but I think we have access, based on, if you recall, when we passed the last bond issue, when we sold the bonds, we knocked off about 7 years because of the bond rate that we sold them for. So what can we do potentially to re-access dollars to do additional construction? Some will be physical, some will be air temperature. I don't know how to say it. Because you see air condition as maybe not a physical change, but it's definitely something that people think about, not this week, but they think about in August, in May, and in some of those days that it's
Snow
pretty
day,
warm.
snow day makeup days.
Yes, that's a great way to look at it. Those days in June, they might have a makeup day that turns into a heat day, and that would be anyway. So that would be my fourth. I will say this, on your handout, the first bullet says obtain informal approval. It's really informal consideration, for what that looks like from the board to proceed with planning. So in February, we'll have a deeper conversation about what that looks like, but a goal would be to try to achieve this. That doesn't mean we're having a bond in 2025. That means that we wanna do all this work in 2025. It's about an 18-month process for those. I know Dawn and Ken were here when it started. It's about an 18-month process to begin these conversations. And it's not all just about what, It's about when and it's about how.
And
I
why.
know the what is what, we can ask for what people wanna do, and we'll get $3.5 billion worth of ideas, or that's not going to happen. So,
So my question then was
Yes.
how that will align time-wise with the next SOAR 6
Yep.
and surveys that would go out. So part of my wonder as a board member saying, yes, let's go ahead and explore, although intuitively I know we need to move ahead, is there feedback we need to get too far into this?
yeah, so the idea would be that hopefully in the fall, we can seek feedback in multiple forms. Whether it be PTC meetings that I've already talked to our interschool advisory about potentially what their role might be in this. And I know several of you have been to our interschool advisory meetings. What does it look like from a staffing standpoint? What does it look like from an administrative standpoint? And then surveying our community. And then hopefully we get enough feedback to get kind of our feet off the ground and then say, okay, what is our vision of what this could look like? And then traditionally, in our SOAR survey in the spring of '26, so that's when our next survey is. We have focus groups that will be in January, February, and then we go through the next strategic planning. We traditionally would add questions on there that might be, I'll call them the deal breaker. We had a question about, do we add on to the high school, add on to the freshman campus, do we connect the two buildings, or would we build another high school? And overwhelmingly, people said connect the two buildings. So that was like our final piece to that puzzle. We might have the opportunity during the SOAR survey to kind of finish the checklist, if that answers your question.
I just don't wanna get too far down the road and then end up in a survey that we're doing that has a totally different idea
Yeah.
than where we were thinking things were going.
No, before we survey, we'll have plenty of meetings with
Gotcha.
constituents to say what, and board, to
Yes.
say, what does this look like? What
Okay.
are some of the, I'll say, I mean, enrollment's a big component, and it's not, you think about district enrollment, we think about location in the district enrollment, right? So there's a lot of layers to it.
It's a lot of goals. A lot of meat
Yeah,
here.
we have a lot of great people supporting this work too, so just to be clear, this is where I think I know there's plenty of other things going on that are not ignored. You know, the transition of policies, that's a heavy lift, but that needs to take place. These are things that, you know, if you look at each one of them individually, you realize the amazing people around this table that also help support those folks.
Transition of policies is important, but it's tactical.
Yeah.
These are strategic.
Yes.
And reflect your aspirations for the district, overlap with the strategic plan appropriately, but not overly so. And, again, really focus on your aspirations and what's important for the district, longer term strategically, so it's different, so good.
Yeah, I appreciate these, and I was looking at goals 1 and 3 in particular, and just, I'm excited to, as we get further and further away from COVID, I always appreciate when Mrs. Armstrong, or Mrs. Taylor brings in the, how we're viewing us in the tests, you know, and just, you know, those are like measurable
Yeah.
goals that we're trying to achieve.
There's a couple of things I want to bring up. I appreciate you putting these 5 goals together, Dr. Vanderjay. We did say last year that when we came to this goal setting, we were going to document mutually agreed upon expectations, indicators, and that type of stuff. And we also had this, which I will be sending out to everybody, which talks about involve all board members and superintendent when we come to working on these goals. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send this to each one of the board members along with a couple of other things that we had last year. And I'm gonna ask you if you as individual board members have any goals that aren't on here that you would like to see put into these goals. And then as I formulate those and get those back from everybody, then at our next meeting, I'd like to talk about those so that we have the input from the board on what they think is appropriate. If there's anything that's more appropriate perhaps, or less appropriate, and then we'll go from there. Also, there's some big things coming up, and I'm sure you and Pat are aware of these things. Nick just sent me today an article in Crane magazine or Crane newspaper about the title of the article is "Amid Staggering K through 12 Enrollment Decline, Michigan has decisions to make." And I'm gonna send this to everybody so that they have a look at it. But it's pretty dramatic when you start to look at where we've come the last 5 or 10 years in drops in enrollment and what they're talking about over the next several years. And I think that plays very neatly into what you're talking about, you know, what people may desire, what we may desire going forward. I think we really have to take a look at these types of things. I saw a study last week that came out. There were only 6 counties in Michigan that when they had births compared to deaths in '23 had more births than deaths. Ottawa County was one of them, and so is Kent County. But those are all things that really are strategically important. And you could say, well, we don't have to worry about that for another 5 or 6 years. However, 5 or 6 years and what we may have to do, it could be start tomorrow. So, anyway, I think I will get this to everybody and to you, Dr. Brandon Jackson.
I received that already.
Good,
from
excellent.
Somebody else.
Yeah, I've got it.
Excellent.
I've got it.
Good, okay. So maybe we can discuss that at our next meeting.
On the goals, Greg, were you referring to feedback on Dr. Vanderjack's goals or goal?
Yes, no, on Dr. Brandon Jackson. Yeah, I will send you this, stuff that we had last year that we looked at. Are we finished with your goals?
I'm done.
Okay. I think we're ready to go to the day plan here. Let's see, so. I wanna start out with, I'm gonna start out with Ken, see if you've got any, oh.
Before, we have a
Oh,
closed session
sure,
to get
closed
to, so
session.
can I ask the board to, I guess you can do it too, we need a motion, a second, and roll call vote for closed session. For the audience, just so you know, after the closed session, there's nothing else on the agenda. You're welcome to stay to watch them come back to adjourn, but it's completely up to you.
I'll make a motion for the board to go into closed session.
Okay. All in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Okay. Gwen?
Joy?
George?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm gonna ask you to close in the closed
Yeah.
session, secretary, so go in the room next door and we'll